Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday and welcome back to the stream. It's a tough stream. I'm just going to say this up front, and we got a lot to unpack today that is not the most fun of topics, but it's wildly important that we use any opportunity to get the word out about the true evil that is taking root in Western civilization, particularly when the mainstream media is refusing to do just that. It's up to us, we the people, to have our voices speak the truth when truth is being erased at every possible opportunity in modern society. And that's exactly what we are going to do today. For those of you who just randomly clicked on the stream or you stumbled upon it and you don't know what we're covering today, there is some emerging news this week that the German parliament has officially voted to decriminalize possession of child pornography. And no, I'm not kidding. This is not satire. It's not hyperbole. Quite literally, the German parliament has voted to decriminalize, from a felony to a misdemeanor, possession of child pornography. This comes on the heels of Western civilization doing absolutely everything they can to normalize the exploitation, sexually and otherwise, of children, and it's an absolutely horrifying step towards a dystopian future that I don't care what your nationality, your religious background, your political values happens to be, we all have to link arms and fight back against to prevent from being normalized further. As we are getting started in the stream today, even though it's a more heavy-handed topic, as always, we want your guys' full participation in our conversation today. So please be using our live chat throughout the entirety of today's conversation. We are live, as always, on all of our platforms: YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Locals, Getter, and Instagram. And we are growing these channels completely organically, one person at a time. So it would mean the absolute world to me if you guys could smash that follow or subscribe button, no matter where you are watching, to get us towards our next big milestones. We just recently hit 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is amazing. And we are getting darn close to 1 million of you over in our amazing community on Instagram. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for you guys supporting our beautiful growth and trajectory. And even more importantly than all of that, because it's not really about the numbers, in supporting our mission to tell the truth to the world and cover stories that are getting little to zero coverage in the outlets that be the mainstream. We're going to say hi to a couple of people right now in our chat to kick things off. So let us know who you are and where you're watching from in case you haven't already. Over on Instagram, we've got Paul and Isabel, good name, watching in Doha. How very cool. Enoch is tuning in our Instagram chat. We've got Little Folsom watching in Spokane, Washington. So very cool. And Emma watching in Spokane, Washington. I wonder if you guys are neighbors. We love that. Me Kirk is watching in Austin, Texas. We've got South Florida, California, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Oklahoma, San Antonio, Ireland, North Carolina, Montana, Germany, and more. As you guys are tuning in from Germany, I know we have a lot of Germans who watch the stream every day. Please be letting us know what you guys, if anything, are seeing in the media and how your country is talking about this. Also, I'm seeing some concerns come through in our Instagram chat that my voice always goes like up and down multiple octaves. That's an Instagram issue. We have tried absolutely everything we can to fix that, but it seems to be a coding issue on their end with our TMP streaming. So hopefully they end up fixing it very, very soon. Over on YouTube, we've got Woo watching in Brooklyn. Fa is watching somewhere in America. Kimberly's watching in Philly. We've got John watching in Quebec. Dale is in England. Brandon's watching in Alabama. Teresa is also watching in Germany. Germans, we need to know what the heck is going on. Over on Rumble, my Quilwin and Farmer Caleb are kicking things off for us in the chat. On Getter, we've got Nitty Witty starting things for us. And over on Locals, Horrors of Cody, Aaron, Alex, and AWACS are kicking things off for us in our chat. I love you guys so much. And I encourage you to stick around through the whole stream today. I know this is going to be a really heavy-handed topic for us to discuss. It's emotionally very difficult for us to discuss. It's infuriating and it makes us all angry. But it is up to us to be well informed about the very clear intentional efforts by evil people seeking to accomplish evil in our society so that we can appropriately fight back against them and shut them down. So on that note, I don't know how else to possibly introduce this subject. Let's jump right in. Last Thursday, the German parliament, I do not speak German, so this is very difficult for me to try to pronounce, but I believe it's Bundestag. I think the German parliament is called the Bundestag, has received the votes necessary with a bill that specifically is aimed at lowering minimum sentences for child pornography offenses. Essentially, what this bill does, and this is a poor translation on the German parliament's website, allowing for lower minimum sentences for child pornography offenses, is it removes a section of the German criminal code that made possession of child pornography in Germany a felony crime. So previously, I believe since 2021, and Germans, you can fact check me on this in the chat, it was highly illegal and considered a felony within the nation of Germany to possess child sexual abuse material, child pornography, etc. But there is a new bill that just passed the German parliament on Thursday that created a new path forward for a reduction in the minimum penalties, meaning they're lowering, decriminalizing aspects of child pornography possession in Germany. By erasing this section of the German criminal code, minimum sentences for child pornography are officially reduced once this goes into effect as a law, and the offense at totality will now be considered not a felony, but a misdemeanor. In other words, it's not really considered extreme criminal behavior in the nation of Germany to possess child pornography. I honestly, I'm nauseous telling you this right now on the stream, and I probably will cry at some point before the end of this stream because I am so unbelievably disgusted that this is even remotely up for debate in Western civilization. How is it possible we are labeling this a good step forward? How are we even asking these questions or talking about this? But there was a clear majority of lawmakers in the German parliament that have voted to make this law. Coming to a country near you, I'm sure, because there's no way this stays within Germany. According to, and I'm so sorry again for my horrible pronunciation, the Bundestag, the bill stipulates that the possession and acquisition of child pornography should be punishable with a minimum penalty of 3 months imprisonment and distribution with a minimum penalty of 6 months imprisonment. And oh, that's the same thing. So basically, if you have child pornography in your home, you might go to prison for 3 months. Maybe. If you distribute child pornography under this new law in Germany, you might go to prison for 6 months. But that's it. And of course, that is if they choose to charge you with the crime to begin with, which are now misdemeanors classified under the Criminal Code of Germany and not crimes. What's really crazy for me about all of this is I looked this up because I happened to see somebody that I really trust in the anti-human trafficking space, fighting against human trafficking space, post this on Instagram on Friday. And I was totally shocked, but I looked it up and not a single mainstream media outlet seemed to be covering this whatsoever. I found one article until later this afternoon talking about this at all, and it's some indie blog site called Redux Feminist News and Opinion. That's it. That's the only English-speaking media that I can find chronicling all of this for us, and basically no one else is talking about it, at least from American English-speaking media. And I'm just blown away by the response that at least this indie blog site seems to be chronicling in Germany. So I know we have some Germans watching, at least on YouTube and on Instagram. So if you are, please let me know if this is an exaggeration or not in your country. But at least according to this blog site, there is a notorious activism group in Germany called K13. They self-describe themselves as a self-help organization for pedosexuals. In other words, they are essentially an activism group in Germany doing everything they can to normalize the acceptance and legalization of pedophilia as a legitimate sexual orientation. I'm not shocked at face value that there is an activism group dedicated to a cause like this in Europe, because we're seeing a lot of people talk about this in the United States right now. But this K13 group, this activism group, is ecstatic that this bill has passed, because for years and years and years, they have gone out of their way to lobby the German parliament to reduce these sentences and decriminalize child pornography, and even going a step further to essentially decriminalize child-adult sexual relationships. Don't take my word for it. This blog site has got the receipts with links to all of the receipts for all of this. K13 was founded by a man named Dieter, and I'm not even going to begin to pronounce his last name, but we'll say Dieter G., who has in the past repeatedly been charged with the possession of child pornography, and has served time in prison in Germany for doing this. In 1996, he spent 18 months in prison. He ended up only serving 1 year of his 18-month sentence on charges related to operating a mail-in order child pornography service from a van. So he was first sent to prison the year before I was born. Okay, let's just make this abundantly clear. The year before I was born, this man spent a year in prison for operating a mail-in order child pornography service out of a van in Germany. In 2003, he again appeared in court and was accused of possession of child sexual abuse material obtained after he got out of prison between 1999 and 2001. The pornography was found on his computer after they searched his residence, and his devices contained a total of 216 image files of naked children. 216 photos, individual photos of naked kids found on his computer in August of 2001. So almost 23 years ago. So he again was sentenced to 8 months in prison. Second time being sentenced for this offense. This is the guy who founded this K13 pro-pedophilia activism organization that is shouting from the rooftops joy and gratification and excitement that the German parliament has just decriminalized this offense. Okay? This is where this all came from. At that same time, in 2001, Dieter was also accused of linking to a child pornography page on his website. At the time, the federal government had an organization that was supposed to be protecting minors online. Don't know where that went in the last 23 years, and discovered this link, and he immediately got in trouble for that. But here's the real kicker, okay? Dieter G., the guy who created K13, this German activism organization, in 2014 gave a public interview to an outlet called Taz Online. And 10 years ago, a decade ago, this man actually said that Germany should lower the age of consent for children to legally be able to consent to sexual relations to 12 years old. 12. And said that adult sexual interactions with toddlers should also be separately discussed as normal, decriminalized behavior in the nation of Germany. 10 years ago, in this outlet with Taz Online in 2014, Dieter G., the founder of K13, said this: "The taboo of pedophilia must finally be broken at all levels of society. If a pedophile can come out without fear of exclusion or even demonization, then this is, in his words, the best prevention against child abuse." I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not even a psychologist. I do have some degrees in biomedical sciences, but I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in mental health. But I'm pretty sure, just as a sane, logically thinking individual who understands how criminal behavior works, if you normalize and decriminalize pedophilia, that's not going to decrease the number of pedophiles exploiting children. I'm pretty sure if you can normalize pedophiles coming out about their supposedly legitimate sexual orientation, that's not going to prevent against child abuse. It's not going to protect children from child abuse. It's only going to normalize it further. In this interview 10 years ago, the founder of K13 went on to say this: for babies and toddlers and elementary school students, the sexual component in such a relationship, romantic relationship, is problematic. This would have to be discussed separately. From a sexual policy perspective, an age of consent of 12 is appropriate and long overdue in today's enlightened society. There are boys and girls who take the initiative in a friendly and sexual relationship with a pedosexual. There are children, he is saying, who initiate relationships with adults. That does not exist. No child of any age can reasonably consent to an intimate physical relationship with an adult. But that's not how these people see the world. Therefore, there is a need for sexual criminal law reform that does justice to everyone involved by legalizing the age of consent to be 12 years old. This was proposed, again, by Dieter G., the creator of this pro-pedophile activism group in Germany called K13. They are ecstatic about the passage of this bill that is eliminating the section of the criminal code in Germany right now, as we speak, that treats child pornography possession as a felony in Germany. So again, to be abundantly clear, where I'm just shocked is that the only place I could find this information, and why I was hesitant to talk about it until now, is on this feminist indie blog site. Like, nobody in mainstream media has been talking about this at all. Certainly nobody in American English-speaking mainstream media is linking to the German parliament's website about this legislation. And everyone in my comments and in my chat right now in Europe is saying nobody is talking about this. Like, our media is not talking about it. I can't find this in a Google search in my own country. So clearly, the powers that be know this is wrong, right? I mean, they're doing absolutely everything they can to just sweep this under the rug and try not to draw international attention to it. But also, they're bold enough to actually pass this as a legitimate bill, as an actual law to be within the nation of Germany. So they're not doing that great of a job hiding it because it's all public record. And all of a sudden, this afternoon, mere hours ago, different news organizations that lean more to the conservative side, that are much smaller and less well-funded than a Fox News or Newsweek magazine or the Wall Street Journal, have begun reporting on this, and they're sources that I trust, and I know a lot of the people who work at these outlets. So yeah, it's starting to hit the mainstream as we speak, but only because enough people are actually willing to talk about it on social media. What's really scary is that this isn't just about, clearly, possession of child pornography, which would be terrible enough in and of itself. Like, it is nauseating to me to know that very imminently, within the next several days, as this bill transitions to become a law in Germany, it will no longer be considered a felony, only a misdemeanor, to possess images, lewd, disgusting, explicit images of children in a sexual context in Germany. But clearly, the people, the organization in this K13 group who have lobbied for this law to turn into reality are also asking for something bigger and have been since before I was born for the last nearly 30 years, okay? And that has been to normalize and to mainstream adult-child sexual, intimate, physical relationships. Not just to normalize them culturally, but even to legalize them in lobbying for and pushing for the age of consent in Germany to be lowered from 14 years old, which is where it sits today, already disgustingly way too low. Like Germany, you have an issue, okay? As it sits today, the age of consent in Germany is 14 years old. That's not enough for these people. That's not enough for these animals, frankly, because that's who we're discussing here. Now they're pushing for legitimate, legalized relationships to exist between exploitative adults and 12-year-olds. In what world can a 12-year-old reasonably understand what they are supposedly consenting to in engaging in this type of a relationship with an adult? It doesn't exist. There is no world in which that exists. And yet I feel like the crazy one because nobody's talking about this. I feel like I'm gaslighting myself. Like, am I the crazy one? The media isn't talking about this. I didn't know Germany's age of consent law is already sitting at 14, which is already horrifying in and of itself. Hello? Am I the insane one? Anchored Islands, thank you for your donation in our super chat. Says on YouTube, we are at a time when criminals have more rights than law-abiding citizens. This is not to protect children, but instead to protect criminals. Yeah, actually. I guess in this world, in our current Western civilization, you, as a parent, trying to protect your kid from being exploited would be considered the bad guy. Parents already are all over the West, all throughout Canada, now all throughout the United States. I don't know what the situation is like in Europe, but if you're a parent who, let's say, sees their child want to change their gender identity and you say, no, you have no history of gender dysphoria whatsoever, we're not allowing you to chop your genitals off, you might lose custody of your child. A good law-abiding citizen seeking to protect the innocence of your kid. You might legally get in trouble for that in Western civilization today. But if you are a creepy, exploitative, horrifying adult who wants to take advantage of the innocence of a child in a sexual manner, you're the good guy. We live in the upside down. Anchored Islands went on to say, look how they care more about the criminal's emotions than the victims. They should ask the victim's opinion rather than the opinion of the criminal and their feelings. Yeah. Because this entire argument, supposedly, that exists for legitimizing and destigmatizing pedophilia in society is to protect the feelings of pedophiles. But I see very few people, particularly very few people in positions of influence who are willing to stand up and protect these kids, to protect the innocence of children, to protect the safety of children, and to protect them against exploitation. In reading the complete non-existent coverage from the mainstream media, but rather smaller news outlets covering this, I immediately, emotionally went back to the release of the Sound of Freedom movie about a year ago. That came out right around 4th of July, if I'm correct, last summer. And I'm just instantly reminded of how the mainstream media covered the release of that movie, that it was some radical right-wing conspiracy theory that kids were being exploited by adults, that kids were being taken advantage of, that human trafficking was even a problem in modern society. They had to do everything they could to make sure people didn't know that was actually going on. And at the same time, we see the same people in positions of power try to normalize and legalize that behavior largely because they are likely participating in it. And that is the most disgusting, nauseating reality that I could possibly begin to wrap my head around. And honestly, is the only logical explanation for how Germany could have even garnered a majority in their parliament to vote for something like this. But make no mistake about it, this is not going to stay localized to Germany. And the amazing team over at The Federalist, a fantastic independent news organization that does really great work in independent journalism, this afternoon posted a new halfway opinion piece, but I think is really, really powerful. And I want to share this perspective with you because notice how no one at Fox News, no one at CNN, no one in the Wall Street Journal, no one at the New York Times, no one at Newsweek, no one at Time Magazine, no one in the mainstream media is talking about the disastrous and terrifying dystopian impact that this law in Germany will have on the rest of Western civilization, except for this teeny tiny publication that very few people read, but I'm hopeful provides a perspective that we all can start shouting as loud as we can from the rooftops. That Germany's decriminalization of child pornography reminds us why we need societal taboos. In other words, it's okay to not normalize, the favorite word of the radical left right now, literally every single thing in society. Like, believe it or not every single thing in society is supposed to be normalized, okay? There are bad people who do bad things, objectively speaking, which is why objective truth and objective morality in society actually do really matter, okay? My truth being different from your truth, my sense of right and wrong being different from your sense of right and wrong. That's exactly what has led us to this situation. Are we all abundantly clear on the same page as that? So not everything is supposed to be normalized. There is supposed to be a societal taboo on evil people engaging in evil behavior. And that's exactly the argument this piece in The Federalist today is making. They say there was an instructional news item this week that helps to explain the collapse of Western civilization we see all around us these days. The German parliament voted to decriminalize the possession of child pornography, downgrading it from a felony to a misdemeanor offense and reducing minimum sentences for possession and distribution. German lawmakers justified their action by arguing that decriminalization gave necessary flexibility to deal with the large proportion of juvenile offenders and would also supposedly protect parents and teachers who discover child porn on the devices of young people and pass them on to the relevant authorities. I'm sorry, but that is the most shallow argument I could have ever possibly heard for why you would pass a law like this. No prosecutor in any country in Western civilization is reasonably going to charge the parent or the teacher who turns this in, okay? They are not the criminal. Just because you discover something does not mean you participated in it. So they are using this as a very thin veneer, as a facade, to cover up for what their actual intentions clearly are. The piece continues, but as critics rightly noted, instead of creating exceptions in the law to deal with these kind of contingencies, German lawmakers downgraded all possession and distribution of child porn, a move that was cheered by pro-pedophile advocacy groups. The members of these groups believe that anti-child porn laws, and indeed all legal prohibitions on pedophilia, are nothing more than antiquated taboos that society must discard in the name of personal autonomy and self-determination. One such group, K13, who we've already talked about, praised the vote, but as we already said, the vote decriminalizing child porn is not enough for these people, right? Pedophilia itself must be decriminalized in their worldview. They bemoaned the fact that no politician had yet apologized to the thousands upon thousands of those who fell victim, i.e. the pedophiles, to the now defunct criminal laws prohibiting possession and distribution of child porn. K13, the same organization that's pushing to lower the age of consent in Germany to 12 years old, actually had the audacity to say, thanks, but no thanks, because you in German parliament haven't apologized to the pedophiles. You haven't legitimized our cause enough yet. The Federalist publishes this. Why is this happening in a supposedly enlightened Western nation like Germany? It's not a mystery. Indeed, German lawmakers are simply applying the same twisted rationale of consent that American lawmakers have been applying to other hot-button issues for years. From gay marriage to so-called gender-affirming care, consent has been the rationale for the removal of one societal taboo after another. So long as all parties freely consent, goes the thinking, there's almost nothing that can be justly prohibited by law. So says Dieter G., the guy that we just talked about. They explain here that he has been trying to lower the age of consent. They're trying to normalize pedophilia in this enlightened society, and he's getting his wish. Decades after he began this crusade against societal taboo for something that deserves to be treated as societally taboo in any country, particularly an enlightened, westernized country, one would think. According to this corrupted way of thinking, nothing more than consent is required for a sexual relationship to have legitimacy. The logic goes like this. Because minors are autonomous people with human rights, any restriction on activities to which they consent is unjust. Sexual self-determination in particular means that there is no legitimate basis for laws that criminalize pedophilia or child pornography, so long as the children in question give their consent. On the exact same basis, laws prohibiting minors from taking puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or getting irreversible surgeries that leave them mutilated or sterile are also considered unjust. This is, of course, they argue, not just morally insane. Thank you. I'm glad somebody is saying that in our society. It's also profoundly disingenuous. The reason for age of consent laws about anything, tattoos, drinking, sex, the whole nine, is that society recognizes there are entire categories of activities to which children and minors are incapable of giving consent. They are not mature enough to understand the implications or the consequences of such a decision. And we have traditionally codified that reality in law. That's why parents routinely make decisions on their child's behalf. It's also one of the reasons children can't get tattoos or buy alcohol, among many other things. This isn't hard to understand, and indeed, there's a broad societal consensus around the basic claim that children can't consent to certain things or make certain decisions on their own behalf. Thank you. I don't think that's that antiquated of a view in modern society. But the sad reality is we don't live in modern society anymore. We live in postmodern society, where there is no such thing as objective morality. There certainly is no such thing as objective truth. And if that's the case, then there's no such thing as a legitimate reason to believe that children can't make these decisions for themselves. Besides, if our society is largely accepting that children can chop off their own genitals and children can choose to sterilize themselves and mutilate their own genitals, why couldn't they make the same type of emotionally difficult decision as to have sex with an adult? Be in a consenting sexual relationship with an adult. This is the slippery slope. And I love the way that the Federalist in this article is comparing the two ideologies of gender theory that, frankly, I like to call gender theology a whole lot more than theory or identity these days because it's become a religion at this point. They're comparing the ideology of gender theology and the ideology of pedophilia in the exact same vein, which I think is a really appropriate comparison to make. Because what you are doing is gaslighting a child who lacks the emotional maturity to understand the consequences of such a catastrophic decision to believe that it is their autonomy. It is their entire consent that is allowing for the liberation and freedom of these kids to participate in society equally with adults. Not too long ago, we had the beautiful and very inspiring Chloe Cole as a guest on my stream. And she talks about how this is the same type of language that often is used with children going through gender transition. That it's everything that you want. Nobody can tell you what you want except for you. But at the same time, they are not even allowed as adults in your life under law in many circumstances to push back and ask the simple question, are you sure? She describes her journey of transitioning and then detransitioning in California as a preteen and teenager as a one-way ticket straight to transition. There was no conversation about, are you sure? There was no real unpacking of whether she was truly experiencing gender dysphoria or not. And interestingly, her parents legally could not push back, or they likely would lose custody of their child. Her doctors legally could not push back, or they might lose their license to practice medicine. Her school counselors legally could not push back, or they would be fired from the school system and blacklisted by every teachers association in the state of California and around the country. So she found herself prescribed testosterone injections at 12 years old, undergoing a radical double mastectomy or top surgery at 15 years old. And by the time she turned 17 and was a junior in high school, woke up one day in class in high school and said, I am not a boy. I'm a girl. I've always been a girl. This is who I am. And how on God's green earth did every single adult in my life shove me into this under the thin veneer of consent, under the facade and the guise of empowerment of children, of enlightenment of children, of liberation of children from supposedly stiff and antiquated ideologies that no longer fit into modern society. It's the exact same philosophy that's now being applied to attempt to legitimize pedophilia and adult-child sexual relationships by gaslighting and convincing children this is what you want. And as long as we get your consent, no matter how shallow or emotionally manipulative your consent is, then we have the green light to engage in any sort of degenerate behavior that we could possibly want to, because that's what supposedly an enlightened society is supposed to look like. The Federalist says this: if we say, as the pro-trans ideologues do, that children can indeed consent to puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or irreversible surgeries, then on what basis can we argue against the pro-pedophile crowd that children cannot consent to sexual relations with an adult? We can't. And increasingly, we won't. In this context, understand the recent discourse around children's rights, whatever that's supposed to mean, for what it is: a deliberate attempt to undermine not just the family and parental authority, but also our longstanding societal consensus that children are not autonomous and cannot make decisions for themselves. When politicians on the left invoke children's rights over and over again against the right of parents, as one Canadian lawmaker did recently in reference to a bill that would require parental approval for gender-affirming care, it is almost always in the service of a radical social agenda intent on tearing down sexual taboos. When you are hearing lawmakers in Canada, in the United States, in the European Union, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, in New Zealand, everywhere in Western society, use this term children's rights, far more often than not, what they are actually saying, although it's not quite as shiny or societally kosher to say, is that they are trying to rip away taboo from society on how we treat children. More importantly, how we protect children. And they are gaslighting you into believing that that's actually good for kids. The article says pro-pedophile activists and their allies in academia, trust me, we are going to come back to allies in academia about normalizing this behavior, at least in the United States, are upfront about this. Our guy Dieter G., remember, said the taboo of pedophilia must finally be broken at all levels of society. But taboos and exclusion and shaming exist for a reason. They discourage predatory and pathological behavior, and they protect vulnerable members of society like children. Tearing down taboos, especially sexual taboos, serves a single purpose: to encourage that which was once forbidden. In Germany's case, the decriminalization of child porn will predictably lead to the proliferation of child porn. Of course, because in what world would you ever decriminalize something with the intent on decreasing it? Oh, I can think of one example in the US. This is the same logic that's been made for the last 12 years, essentially, on decriminalizing illicit drug use, possession, and distribution. Oregon recently became the first state in America to decriminalize every single illicit drug on the marketplace, meaning you too can have legal meth and heroin and anything else under the sun in the state of Oregon. And it got so out of control so quickly because, shocker, decriminalizing meth didn't actually decrease the number of people doing meth. It increased the proliferation of it, that the state of Oregon reneged on that decriminalization and had to reinstitute criminal boundaries against illicit drug use like a year later. So the same logic can be applied here. It's the same, the Federalist says, for us in America. If we want to stop this, we have to bring back taboos. If we don't, we should expect the exact same arguments that were deployed to justify gay marriage, the trans ideology, etc., to be deployed in the service of pedophilia. And the really, really sad reality of this is that it's not just a future far-off expectation of what's likely coming next for the United States. It's already here. And this argument in favor of pedophilia is already seeking to be justified by evil individuals, depraved individuals who want to take advantage of, exploit, and abuse children in the name of progress. Many of you in the last couple of years likely saw a video with this individual go insanely viral on social media. This was a university professor at Old Dominion University in Virginia named Alan Walker, who is trans/non-binary. I can't quite remember exactly what the pronoun situation was there, but a woman, clearly, one would believe, was forced to resign from Old Dominion University, aka fired, because in their experience as a postdoctoral fellow and professor at Old Dominion University, hosted an online seminar arguing that pedophiles should, in the United States of America, instead be called minor attracted persons, or MAPS, apparently to limit and to decrease the amount of child sexual abuse that was happening, allegedly. Indeed, it is a non-binary situation. I'm glad that I looked. Uses they, them pronouns. Was forced out of Old Dominion University after creating this research center and in an online forum/teaching seminar, said that through rigorous science, there's a public health approach to preventing child sexual abuse, and the easiest way to do that is to legitimize pedophiles by calling them minor attracted people. I'm sure many of you remember this video going insanely viral. They, them, it, he, she ended up losing their job at Old Dominion University, and mere months later, Johns Hopkins University, one of the most prestigious universities in the United States of America, especially for science, by the way. Johns Hopkins is regularly ranked in the top 3 medical schools in the country, hired this individual months after all of this was exposed on the internet. So that's great. That's already a thing happening in this country. And as more and more and more of our society is happening here in the digital space instead of in real life, America has also watched a frightening, terrifying, dystopian shift to normalizing pornography, especially among children. Obviously, you've all seen the screenshots and images of the books that have been found in libraries across the country for children as young as kindergarten and elementary school, but especially in a digital sense, because kids have just been handed the internet scot-free with zero boundaries from their parents and said, go nuts. Children are being exposed to pornography at earlier and earlier and earlier ages. A fantastic nonprofit that I cannot recommend doing more research on enough is called Fight the New Drug, and they are doing absolutely everything they can to expose the truth about the pornography industry, how it impacts you as an individual in terms of your brain development and nervous system, how it impacts marriages and relationships, and yes, how it impacts children as well by treating pornography as a drug, because fascinatingly, the exact same neural pathways that form when you experience drug addiction also manifest when you are watching too much pornography. They published this not too long ago, a couple of months ago, about the average age of a child's first exposure to porn in the United States of America. They said it's not surprising that these numbers have skyrocketed, but that's only half the equation. Both young people are being exposed earlier and earlier at younger ages to pornography, but porn is also much more extreme than it ever used to be, with violent and abusive and terrifying content that is normalizing that type of behavior in intimate relationships as well. The really hard part is because you can't really study every single individual in this country, and it's also really based on self-reporting. It's not entirely clear to experts exactly how old most kids are when they are first exposed to porn. All you can rely on is people's self-reporting on the subject, and since it can be embarrassing to talk about, especially in traditional settings like church communities or families, a lot of people won't be honest about it. But at the very least, based on the available data that we have, the likely age in the United States of a child's first exposure to pornography is around their tween years. The vast majority of kids are exposed to porn by age 13, with some exposed being as young as 7. 7 years old. When you should be losing your first teeth and learning how to tie your shoes and zip up your own jacket. That's all according to a survey from 2020. But no matter how young, Fight the New Drug says, these incidents are not isolated cases, and it's not like early porn exposure only happens to a small slice of people. In fact, in the United States, it happens to almost everybody before they leave their teen years. A nationally representative sample of United States youth aged 14 to 18 exposed to pornography showed that before you become an adult, before you legally become an adult in society in the United States today, almost 85% of males and almost 60% of females are exposed to pornography. And when they ask, just randomly, this organization on social media for people to share their stories, they get answers ranging from as young as 6 to 8 to all throughout your teenage years. Somebody in our Instagram chat says, yep, I was exposed at 7 years old by a computer virus that showed me pornography. Someone says, I started at 14, currently the age of consent in Germany, which is horrifying. There's an interesting comment in our chat right now. I'm guilty of allowing my 9-year-old unattended screen time. Thank you for sharing that and for admitting that, because I feel like a lot of parents wouldn't want to admit that right now. And it's hard to blame you for that, because that's just where we're at in society today, right? Most 11-year-olds in this country, most 10 and 11-year-olds have smartphones, and no parent actually sits down and watches over their child's shoulder every single day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, what your kid is watching on the internet, on social media, on YouTube, etc. I mean, Twitter, for God's sake, is the #1 social media app with a problem for pornography. That is the only social media platform, by the way. I am regularly coming across stuff that I don't want to see as a grown adult, which is very, very scary. So I feel like most parents today do have a really similar experience, right? You hand your 9-year-old a smartphone or an iPad and you say, go nuts, kid. And that's not your fault. But I do think parents are starting to wake up and realize that it involves so much more hands-on oversight of what your kids are looking at, sharing, saving, engaging with every day than what most of us give ourselves credit for and give the families around us credit for. So this idea that this ideology that's becoming normalized in Germany is going to stay in Germany and might someday in the far off future come to the shores of the United States of America is a really shallow way of looking at this, because let's be honest, between professors like Alan Walker trying to argue that we should legally change the definition of pedophile to map minor attracted person in society, and kids being exposed to pornography as young as 7, that ideology of lowering the age of consent, of children's rights to liberate them from the bondage of oppression from adults, that ideology is already here. The societal taboo is erasing itself before our very eyes, and it's going to spill over, for the record, into countless other aspects of society. There is a wildly controversial professor at Princeton University, also one of the most allegedly prestigious schools on the face of the planet. And honestly, if the last couple of months haven't taught you anything, if you are an American college student or parent, do the Ivy Leagues offer you literally anything at this point? No, don't go. It's pathetic. But there is a wildly controversial professor at Princeton University named Peter Singer, who for years has been arguing to get rid of societal taboos related to sex. Last November, we talked about this on the stream then, Professor Singer said on his Twitter account that his followers and students should be reading a thought-provoking article that he published in his Journal of Controversial Ideas. The article called "Zoophilia is Morally Permissible." In case you're not up to date with your Latin roots, pedophilia is when an adult is sexually attracted to a child and exploits them that way. Zoophilia is when a human is sexually attracted to and exploits an animal. Dr. Singer says this piece challenges one of society's strongest, there's that word, taboos, and argues for the moral permissibility of some forms of sexual contact between humans and animals. This article offers a controversial perspective that calls for a serious and open discussion on animal ethics and sex ethics. Where is PETA? Where are the animal rights activism groups? Where are the sane individuals sitting around at Princeton University saying, hey, yo, Princeton admin, we should fire this guy because it's not a good look on our university? They're nowhere. Because the truth is, academia and most forms of societal and cultural power today, be it the entertainment industry, the education system, politics, many situations in the church. Do we all remember the Sparkle Creed from a couple of months ago? Powerful people in society, typically today, all adhere to the deconstructionism of society by the radical authoritarian left. And whether it's promoting child gender transition, whether it's promoting minor attracted people, whether it's promoting zoophilia, whether it's promoting socialism, whether it's promoting lab-grown meat or eating the bugs or whatever, their entire mechanism for existence is around challenging and eliminating society's strongest taboos. Because if there is no such thing as objective truth, if there is no such thing as objective morality, then any crazy, degenerate, evil idea, ideology, or action could have some legitimate basis of an argument for moral permissibility in society. I think what's really shocking to most people, especially over the last couple of years, is that you think to yourself, well, that's kind of crazy. That's a little out there, but like, who's it really going to hurt? I don't know. We'll just let it go. I'll stay in my lane. I'll keep my mouth shut and not say anything. But nothing's really going to come about that's that crazy as a result of this. And then the next crazy thing happens and you go, ooh, that was a little crazier than the thing that came before. Not so sure I'm comfortable with all of that, but like, it's still not really affecting me as an individual. It's not affecting my kids. It's not affecting my family. Like, that's weird. Do it in your own house. Ha ha ha. But like, I'll just stay shutting up and stay in my own lane and keep my head down, not draw attention to myself. And this pattern repeats itself and continues to get behaved in society over and over and over again, to the point that then something as absolutely ludicrous and insane and downright evil as lowering the minimum sentence for child pornography, including perhaps images of your own kid or you, becomes nationwide law in your country, in your own backyard. And what blows my mind is that when the craziest possible thing that could ever be argued for in society, like legitimizing zoophilia or legitimizing pedophilia for minor attracted people or lowering the age of consent to 12, then come about as a result of the insanity, then all of a sudden, good ordinary people start breathing in a bag and they start freaking out. How on God's green earth could this ever have happened? How could we have allowed this to happen? No one ever saw this coming. And it's like, really? Really? Nobody ever saw this coming. Nobody could have predicted that this would be the logical conclusion of everything we were talking about 20 years ago. Maybe it's just that everything used to be considered a conspiracy theory in decades past, and now conspiracy theorists are like people who are just right 6 months ahead of time or a year ahead of time. But I can think back to just a few years ago, being so plugged into all of this stuff going on, particularly within the LGBTQ community, and people making the argument that children have the autonomy to chop their body parts off, children have the autonomy to take hormone therapy medications and puberty blockers. There were a lot of smart people at that time who were saying this is so dangerous to normalize and accept in society because it's not just about this. This will be used as a springboard, as a jumping block, straight to children can consent to sex. Mark my words. That was what? 5 years ago? 4 years ago? Not even. And here we are, when one of the supposedly most enlightened nations on the face of the planet, at least in modern history, Germany, decriminalizes child pornography possession, largely because of the influence of groups like K13, who actually are arguing for the lowering of the age of consent to 12 so that pedophiles can come out without fear of exclusion or even demonization, and so that 12-year-olds can take the initiative in initiating friendly and sexual relationships with a pedosexual. I hate to say I told you so, but this is the slippery slope. This is already at our shores. This is already becoming legal code in at least one country. And I'm sure there are more that the mainstream media is not talking about and refusing to draw attention to because that's just a conspiracy theory. But is it? I don't think so. If you Google right now, Germany Parliament, one would imagine this would be the #1 news story across every single mainstream news outlet. But no. If you Google Germany Parliament, you're going to see that a German candidate was barred from an EU election because he said something about Nazis. You're going to see that the German Parliament is going to relax restrictions on family names, that there's some far-right rally in France impacting politics in Germany, that the Europe's far right is in disarray. Is democracy at stake? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Only at the very bottom, from the Washington Examiner, again, a very small news publication in the United States that very few people read, 20 search results down, are you going to see that the German government is softening its child pornography laws. The media is in on it. Academia is in on it. The government is in on it. The entertainment industry is in on it. A lot of people in the church, particularly all these postmodern deconstructionism Christianity churches, they're in on it. The question is, are you going to be in on it? Are you going to do the same thing that we have done for decades and decades and decades and decades, to put your head down and shut up and sit down because you don't want to be that crazy conspiracy theorist? You don't want to be that person that says that the worst possible thing that could happen is probably going to happen because that's just crazy. That would never happen, right? Are you going to be the person that says, well, as long as it doesn't impact my kids for now, although it might in the future, then it doesn't really bother me. It doesn't really upset me. I shouldn't say anything about it. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose followers on social media. I don't want to have friends say that I'm mean or bigoted or exclusionary in any way, shape, or form. What are we going to do about it? The first step you could take today is share this stream with other people in as many places as humanly possible, because nobody in the media is talking about this. This is solely being talked about right now on a very small handful of independent YouTube and Rumble channels, for the most part, that I can see, and a few tweets. That's it. So make people be aware of this. But the biggest thing that I really want to challenge you to do moving forward is quite simple. When people warn you about the logical conclusion of a certain way of thinking, like legitimizing children's consent to mutilate themselves and take castrating drugs and chop their body parts off, and they argue that there is a logical conclusion here that bad, evil, mean people, pedophiles, are going to apply this to age of consent for sex, believe them. Stop poking your head in the sand. Stop insinuating that those people are just crazy whack job conspiracy theorists. Give them an opportunity to make their case and legitimately consider it. Okay, there are actually some conspiracy theorists out there and people who do manipulate you and try to say all kinds of crazy things like, it's the apocalypse tomorrow. How many freaking eclipse videos did we all see for something like that? But on something that has a very logical and evidence-based conclusion, the simplest thing we can do is believe what bad people tell us what their objections are going to be and what their very clear path in society is going to look like and manifest itself to be. When evil people tell you who they are, believe them. And they've been telling us this. Oh, Instagram says sound might be off. That's an Instagram problem. Exit out, come back in. Hang on. That's on Instagram. When bad, evil people tell you who they are, believe them. They've been telling us this. The organization founder of K13 has been telling you this since he was originally sentenced to prison for operating a mail-in child pornography service the year before I was born. For 28 years. When evil people tell you who they are, believe them. The last thing I want to challenge you to do is also very, very, very simple in the grand scheme of things. And it's something that we often look at as a last resort, but instead should be our first line of both defense and offense in society in fighting back against evil. And that's prayer. I know we laugh and we say, oh, ha, 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 all the Christians will pray. Yeah, whatever. But is that really going to make that much of a difference? Yes, it does. Prayer makes a markable, notable difference, not just as a last line of defense, but the first line of offense against evil in society. Because how we even arrived at this place, how there is a legitimate argument being made by powerful people in society that children can very reasonably consent to sex with adults, is that we removed God from society. And you might hear me say that and think, okay, well, Isabel, what if I don't believe in God? What if I'm an atheist? What if I'm not a Christian? What if I don't have the same worldview as you? Hear me out. Dennis Prager often says that when there is no wisdom in society, it's because there is no God in society, whether you personally are an atheist or not. Dennis is a practicing Jew. I am a practicing Christian. We have very different worldviews, but I really appreciate how he says this. When you remove God from society, you remove wisdom from society, because the concept of God and a higher power in and of itself is that there is a vertical hierarchy of beings, that there is something bigger and supernatural above everything that we experience every day. And if there is a vertical hierarchy of beings, there is also a vertical hierarchy of good and evil. There is good up here that we esteem and we hold in high regard in society, and there is evil down here that we want to shove further down to make sure that it is never normalized in society. When you remove even the concept of something bigger than yourself, of a higher power, of God, of Christ, whatever you personally want to call that, all of a sudden, there is no vertical hierarchy of wisdom. There is no vertical hierarchy of good versus evil. There is only, as Dennis would put it, a horizontal, constant competing niche of ideas. Because if you have no objective morality, there is only subjective truth and morality, where this group of people can say, my truth is different from your truth, and my truth matters more than your truth. But as soon as one side starts to get more powerful, louder, and more entrenched in societal positions of influence than the other, they can overtake the other side. That is what we are watching play out in real time today. Right now, we are watching evil people get louder and louder and more powerful than good people who say their version of morality, their truth, is better and trounces what we have considered to be objective morality in the history of Western civilization. So whether you personally believe in God or not, the essence of having something bigger than yourself in society, something larger than ourselves that sets a vertical totem pole of good versus evil, of objective truth, of wisdom, is so powerfully poignant now more than ever. Because look what happened when we took him out of the equation, when we created the competing horizontal interests instead of a vertical hierarchy of good and bad, of right and wrong, of moral and evil. Prayer is not just the last thing that we do when we've exhausted all of our other options. It's not our last line of defense. It should be our first step forward in lockstep altogether on offense against evil in society. And if you're not incorporating prayer as a daily part of your daily routine already, I highly, highly, highly encourage you, and frankly at this point beg you, to do just that. One of our sponsors on the stream, and I didn't even plan this as a live ad read, but one of our sponsors on the stream is Hallow, which is the world's largest Christian prayer app. And it is for everyone of every background, every denomination, and many of you have already checked it out. But I have absolutely loved working with Hallow, and frankly, just as a consumer of all of Hallow's content on the app, my prayer life has completely transformed since Ash Wednesday on Valentine's Day. That was a fun little overlap that happened this year, all the way through today, because I'm realizing it can be a part of my day-to-day life. It is not an afterthought. It should be the first thing that I think about when I wake up in the morning, and it should be the last thing that I think about when I go to sleep at night. A bunch of you guys are saying in the chat right now, I use Hallow every single day. Yeah, me too, because it's freaking awesome. And not to spoil anything, but also kind of spoilers, I'm probably doing something very fun on the platform later on this year. More to come on all of that. But if you're not Christian, if you're not religious, I want to challenge you to download Hallow as an app today, just to see what's on the platform. Just listen to a handful of the prayers, the guided prayers and meditations. There are podcast episodes, there are mental health resources, there are history lessons. It's so much more than just let's all sit around and pray the rosary in unison together, although you should probably listen to that too and just check it out. But I want to challenge you to download this app today. And because they're a sponsor of the stream, you guys get a 3-month free promo for every single thing on Hallow if you go to hallow.com/Isabel. Don't just go to the App Store and download it. Go to hallow.com/Isabel and it'll be baked in as a 3-month free trial. And then you can delete it if you want to after that. They are a company, so they have to make money and pay people. So that's just reality. But for 3 months, for 90 days, every single thing on their platform can be free 99 to you if you go to hallow.com/Isabel. And I just want to challenge you to download this app and just listen to it for 5 minutes or less every single day for a week, and then for a month, and then for 2 months, and then for 90 days. Just try it. Because I really, truly believe if every single one of us who claim that we believe in something bigger than ourselves, who claim that we are Christian, who claim we believe in objective truth and a hierarchy of morality, actually put our time where our mouth is and sacrificed 5 minutes of our day to make prayer a part of our daily routine, which if we're being wildly honest with ourselves, we don't do. Most of us don't. If we're really being honest and looking in the mirror, most of us don't. I really believe the world would be a better place. I do. Everybody's asking, I'm not religious. I've never prayed. Should I download this app and see where it takes me? Yes. I would just be fascinated, Jason, and everybody else asking me this question, to see how it impacts your mental health, your perspective on the world, how you treat others, how you look at good and evil, how you look at truth. If every single one of us could make this a very small part of our day-to-day life, as a first step on offense, not the last line of defense, I guarantee you headlines like this will cease to exist. But it's up to us to take back culture from evil. It's up to us to replace evil with good. It's up to us to bring a moral hierarchy of right and wrong and wisdom that only can come from God back to society again. For everybody asking, yes, I do have a link in my Instagram bio because I can't drop links in our chat on Instagram for where you can download Hallow, but it's very simple, hallow.com/Isabel, Isabel, 3-month free trial. I just want to challenge you all to make that a better part of your life moving forward. hallow.com/Isabel, Isabel. Germany, y'all, what are you doing? We got a lot to do to fix this situation, but please, please, please consider sharing this stream with others so that they know what's going on when the mainstream media is refusing to talk about this. And let's put some pressure on the world, on people in positions of power to believe in goodness and to tell the truth again. Before you guys go, please, please, please do me a huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button if you guys haven't already. We are trying to grow these channels completely independently and organically, one person at a time, and it makes a world of difference every time that you do it. Jason, you have totally made my day. I'm going to share this with everybody before we go. Okay, I believe that things happen for a reason. I've never clicked on a live Instagram, but I have this evening. So maybe you should download Hallow app and start praying. I am going to pray for you so hard, Jason. It's going to be good. Liam says this stream has totally enlightened me and made me want to do more to help the good return. That's what it's all about. Every single one of us has the capacity to tell truth in our own spheres of influence in any way that we possibly can, whether that be with your family, with your friends, over a cup of coffee, as a content creator yourself. Shout out Alex Padron, one of our daily listeners who is currently on his way to be his own content creator. Every single one of you can do that as well, or anywhere else in society that desperately needs it. We do it right here on the stream every day at 3 p.m.-ish Eastern time, and we'll be back for more of the same tomorrow, where we're going to be talking about what's next for artificial intelligence with the new rollout of ChatGPT and the humanoid AI robots at the Sphere in Las Vegas. Crazy, crazy stuff. Join us tomorrow then. Love you all so much, and we will see you tomorrow.